Welcome back to the deep dive. If you, like so many readers before you, have romanticized the brooding, intense figure of Heathcliff, the quintessential tortured soul of English literature, then this deep dive is going to fundamentally change the way you see Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights.
It's true. For centuries, Heathcliff has been framed as this great romantic hero, a symbol of passionate, untamed love driven to madness only because the world just couldn't handle his devotion.
But we're here today to challenge that, to really challenge it.
We are. We're going between the lines to apply a modern psychological framework to the text. And it shifts the whole view from epic romance to textbook pathology.
Our mission is simple, but I think it's pretty profound to analyze the actual source material and expose Heathcliff not as a victim of circumstance, but as a chilling case study in what we call malignant narcissism.
Exactly. We're going to trace his trajectory from an abused foundling to a calculated grand-scale persecutor. And the text, it offers just overwhelming evidence.
And what's amazing is you don't even have to wait for the backstory to kick in. The immediate warning signs are all right there in Chapter 1.
They are. During Mr. Lockwood's first very uncomfortable visit to Wuthering Heights, Lockwood, he's this outsider. He's used to the polite society of Thrushcross Grange, and his first impression is that he's found a perfect misanthropist's heaven. He even tries to connect with Heathcliff over it.
A shared love of isolation, right? But
Yeah.
that connection it fails instantly. He finds not a quiet recluse, but this barely contained aggression.
Lockwood notes his suspicious black eyes withdraw so suspiciously under their brows. And his fingers, even when they're resting, they shelter themselves with a jealous resolution.
That's not just antisocial, is it? It's a posture of permanent, high-alert hostility.
It speaks volumes about his core character. It's this pervasive sense of distrust and a defensive, aggressive posture toward the world, no matter what the interaction is.
And then Lockwood makes a simple request for shelter, and Heathcliff actually winces. He interrupts him.
He has to establish immediate, total dominance over his physical space. He asserts, "Thrushcross Grange is my own, sir."
That moment is so telling. Lockwood had the audacity to just suggest he might take possession of the property, even just for a moment, and Heathcliff has to aggressively stake his claim. Then comes the invitation.
Walk in.
Yeah, but not really.
Not at all. The narrator, Nellie Dean, she clarifies that this phrase was uttered with closed teeth and expressed the sentiment, "Go to the deuce."
That single aggressive contradiction, the surface politeness masking this visceral rage, that's our first critical clue, isn't it?
It is. You are immediately confronted by suppressed, barely contained aggression. It's a hallmark of instability and this deep, deep-seated resentment.
Exactly. So this is the foundation for our core thesis. If we view Heathcliff through the lens of a malignant narcissist, his entire highly destructive life pattern just snaps into this terrifying focus.
And we should be precise about what that framework entails. We're not just saying he's selfish or, manipulative.
It's more specific.
It is. Malignant narcissism is a specific diagnosis. It combines traits of standard narcissistic personality disorders, so grandiosity, entitlement, a total lack of empathy, with elements of antisocial personality disorder. And the key there is sadism.
Sadism. He takes pleasure in inflicting pain.
Yes, and he views people as objects to be controlled.
So the romantic interpretation that he's just too passionate for this world is completely replaced by the psychological reality, which is that he has a profound inability to feel genuine empathy or connection.
And his life's work is rooted in vindictive triumph. Precisely. His actions are not tragic heroism. They are a calculated antisocial project designed to inflict the humiliation he felt as a child upon his entire environment.
Okay, let's unpack that foundation. We need to look at his origin story. How was the raw material for this villain actually created? How is this trajectory set in motion?
Well, we begin with the famous foundling story in Chapter 4. Mr. Earnshaw brings this dirty, ragged, black-haired boy home from Liverpool, and the text notes the child was sullen, patient, and importantly, he was described as hardened, perhaps, to ill treatment already.
So he wasn't a blank slate. He didn't enter the Earnshaw home as an innocent. He was already armored.
Exactly. And that armor was necessary because the environment immediately confirmed his worst suspicions about the world. He experiences this extreme, visceral, parental rejection. Mrs. Earnshaw was ready to fling the gypsy brat right out the door.
And the children, especially Hindley, they see him as a usurper, someone stealing their father's affection and resources.
And Hindley, who is 14 and very used to his position as the heir, immediately begins this systematic persecution. And we see very early physical violence that establishes this this hierarchy of abuse.
The specific examples are just shocking, especially for kids that age. Hindley crushing Kathy's promised fiddle.
And Kathy and Hindley grinning and spitting at the stupid little thing. The psychological torment is immediate, and then the violence escalates. Hindley knocking Heathcliff under the horse's feet.
And this is where we see the first flicker of the calculating, armor-plated narcissist starting to form, his reaction to that early trauma.
Yes. Nellie Dean, our narrator, she watches him, and she notes he would stand Hindley's blows without winking or shedding a tear. And she initially misinterprets this stoicism. She thinks it's innocence or maybe a lack of vindictiveness.
But the text is explicit. It says Nellie was deceived completely. That calculating endurance, that refusal to show any reaction. It wasn't innocence.
No, it was the construction of emotional armor. Think about that horse incident. Hindley, through violence, destroys Heathcliff's property, his colt. Heathcliff gathers himself up, and instead of crying or fighting, he just coolly uses the incident to get what he wants.
He demands the horse swap. He uses his own pain as leverage.
It's an early, powerful sign of calculated emotional suppression used for transactional gain. This child is learning that pain is not something you express. It's something you weaponize.
And psychologically, the environment he's in is just the perfect breeding ground for grandiosity mixed with that wound. He gets severe rejection from Hindley and Mrs. Earnshaw, which creates that core narcissistic wound, the sense of being worthless, despised.
But that wound is immediately destabilized by Mr. Earnshaw's extreme, excessive favoritism. Earnshaw petted him far above Kathy.
So it's this incredibly unstable dynamic.
Absolutely. Being alternately worshipped and despised, elevated and then degraded, it fosters this profound sense of entitlement, mixed with the constant fear of being cast out. You're taught simultaneously that you are uniquely special and utterly disposable. And that feeds the grandiosity necessary for malignant narcissism.
And then once Mr. Earnshaw dies, that instability just explodes. Hindley takes over, reduces Heathcliff to a servant, denies him education, degrades him further. And this is the moment the victim makes a choice.
Yes. The adult Heathcliff who returns is the calculated, controlling monster built from that raw material. And crucially, he returns not for reunion, but for systematic vengeance rooted in property and power.
And he targets the next generation.
The cycle of abuse doesn't just stop. It replicates, and usually it replicates exponentially worse.
Let's focus on that replication. We see this malevolence bent first on Hareton, Hindley's own son, the last of the ancient Earnshaw stock. Heathcliff's goal is incredibly specific, isn't it?
Terrifyingly specific. He wants to inflict the exact same social and intellectual degradation that Hindley inflicted upon him.
So when he takes over Wuthering Heights, he makes sure Hareton is raised as a brute. The text says he ensures the boy is never taught to read or write and never guarded against vice.
He strips him of his birthright, his social standing, his intellectual capacity. Hareton is reduced to a bore and a pitiful laugh who can only growl curses and take this weird pleasure in his own ignorance.
The detail here is just so important to show the depth of the calculation. He isn't just neglecting the child.
No, he is actively engineering his destruction. Nellie notes in Chapter 21 that this deliberate cruelty is designed to inflict a social wound that Hindley could never recover from. He wants to witness the ultimate triumph of power. If Hindley destroyed his social standing, Heathcliff will destroy Hindley's heir. He'll reduce him to an animalistic state, a mirror of the degradation he himself suffered.
And the psychological abuse just gets compounded when he deals with his own son, Linton Heathcliff, the product of his vengeful marriage to Isabella.
And Linton is sickly, fretful, effeminate. He looks just like his mother.
And Heathcliff's immediate reaction is just. It's pure contempt, pure objectification.
When Linton arrives at the Heights, Heathcliff drags him roughly between his knees. He examines him like livestock and asks with disgust, "Where is my share in the puling chicken?"
He sees nothing of himself, nothing of value in the boy, only weakness and the hated memory of Isabella. He doesn't see a human being. He sees a disappointment, an object that failed to be a proper extension of his grand self.
He even tells Linton that his mother was a wicked slut to leave you in ignorance of the sort of father you possess.
The lack of paternal empathy is just absolute.
It is. Heathcliff treats his son as a disposable tool. Linton is kept captive at the Heights and compelled to communicate with young Catherine Linton, acting as bait in Heathcliff's larger scheme to acquire Thrushcross Grange and torment the dying Edgar.
It's textbook sadistic control. He forces the marriage between the sickly Linton and young Cathy, knowing full well how miserable that union will be for her and how much agony it will cause Edgar Linton.
The boy is the physical manifestation of his unhappy, vindictive marriage, and he uses him as a pawn to inflict maximum suffering on the Linton line. Every single relationship in Heathcliff's adult life is purely transactional. It only serves his need for domination and property acquisition.
Which brings us to the central relationship of the novel Catherine and Heathcliff, the fusion that supposedly defines the book. And we have to ask, was it the greatest love story, or was it a catastrophic failure of self-identity masked as passion?
Oh, it screams pathology. The defining quote, "I am Heathcliff," it sounds beautiful and transcendent on the surface, but within the context of psychological analysis, it's a statement of failed self-differentiation.
It means, I do not know where I end and you begin.
Precisely. And we have to look at Catherine's own behavior. She tells Nellie that she thought, though everybody hated and despised each other, they could not avoid loving me.
Which reveals this core self-centeredness, this belief in her own innate irresistibility. She has some pretty significant narcissistic traits herself.
Oh, absolutely. She believes she's the center of the emotional universe and can bend reality to her will, which feeds directly into the fusion fantasy. She can't separate herself from Heathcliff, but at the same time, she chooses the stability and social standing offered by Edgar Linton.
And she confesses this crucial detail in Chapter 9. She plans to use her marriage to Edgar to elevate Heathcliff socially.
Which is a truly delusional level of grandiosity. She believes she can control two opposing forces, the high society of the Grange and the wild passion of the Heights, using herself as the fulcrum. And of course, that attempt to control just rips her and everyone around her apart.
So their intense bond, which was fueled by their shared early isolation and the abuse under Hindley, it created this inseparable codependency. We'd call this trauma bonding, right?
Trauma bonding is absolutely key here. It's an attachment dynamic where the connection is rooted not in shared joy or mutual respect, but in shared early isolation, chaos, and even abuse. Because their world was so hostile, their connection felt uniquely intense and otherworldly.
And that intensity is often mistaken for mature love.
But it's fundamentally non-viable because it is dependent on external chaos to feel truly alive. They needed the turmoil of Wuthering Heights to validate their own bond.
So when Heathcliff returns after his 3-year absence, he doesn't come back with a healthy, mature love. His attraction is better defined as, what would you call it?
Limerence. It's an involuntary state of intense longing and idealization, often bordering on obsession rather than genuine reciprocal affection. And his transformation is terrifying.
He comes back tall, athletic, well-formed. He possesses what Nellie calls dignified mannerisms.
But this control is all external. It's a facade. Nellie notes the half-civilized ferocity lurked yet in the depressed brows and eyes full of black fire. He's learned to wear the mask of civilization, which makes him so much more dangerous than the ragged boy he was.
And the ultimate proof that his motivation is vengeance, not residual affection, is his marriage to Isabella, Edgar Linton's sister.
That's not a misplaced attempt at moving on. It is an act of pure sadism.
It's designed to maximize suffering for Edgar and Catherine.
Completely. He sees Isabella as a tool of revenge, and Isabella herself quickly recognizes this horrifying truth. She calls him a fiend, an incarnate goblin, who only married her to tease Edgar. She tells Nellie his sole motivation is just externalized destruction.
And the immediate consequence of Heathcliff's presence back at the Grange is Catherine's rapid decline. We see this in Chapter 12. The fever, her refusal to eat, her descent into violent delirium. She is literally driven mad by the conflict between her social desires, Edgar, and that psychological bond she shares with Heathcliff. Her identity just fractures.
And we see her acting out this disorder with this disturbing intensity. She tears the pillow with her teeth. She obsessively stares at her image in the mirror, demanding to know, is that Catherine Linton?
It's a physical display of her internal fragmentation. The moment that fusion fantasy fails, her reality completely collapses.
And her rage is targeted specifically at Edgar's calmness. She rails against his philosophical resignation and his return to his books. She finds his composure unbearable.
She accuses him of waiting for her to die so he can offer prayers of thanks to God for restoring peace to his house.
For a narcissist, or someone with narcissistic traits like Catherine, the worst possible reaction is indifference. Edgar's calm resignation threatens her grandiosity. In realize she isn't powerful enough to disrupt his life entirely. Her fever and her delirium are a desperate, grandiose act designed to force him to acknowledge the world-shattering nature of her pain.
And when she slaps Heathcliff during their confrontation in Chapter 11, the violence inside him is it's fully unleashed. He threatens Edgar with annihilation, a moment of pure, blinding rage.
That scene is vital.
Yeah.
Heathcliff thunders, "If I don't floor him now, I shall murder him sometime. So, as you value his existence, let me get at him." This is the core narcissistic rage, the primal, uncontrollable desire to destroy anyone who threatens the primary attachment object or dares to challenge his control.
His rage knows no bounds. It's explicitly homicidal. So we've established the foundation of trauma and the toxicity of his primary relationship. Now we move into the long game. Let's look at how Heathcliff systematically dismantled the lives of everyone connected to Catherine, proving that his drive was never residual love, but purely revenge and total control.
And this is the most chilling evidence of his malignant nature. Once Catherine dies, his goal shifts from obsessive acquisition of her love to the systematic destruction of her environment. He doesn't just want the person. He wants to own the entire framework of her world and eliminate every rival to his power, living or dead.
The culmination of this is the fate of young Catherine, Cathy II. This is his final ruthless act of control and property acquisition.
It ensures he gains ownership of Thrushcross Grange and completes his domination of both family lines. It begins with calculated manipulation. Despite Edgar's explicit wishes to shield his daughter, Heathcliff lures young Catherine to Wuthering Heights under false pretenses. Nellie rightly suspects a bad design.
He's grooming her for a property takeover.
That's all it is. And when Edgar is dying, Heathcliff accelerates the plan with ruthless efficiency. He ensures Cathy is locked in the Heights to force the marriage with the sickly Linton.
And the physical abuse he gives Cathy is just horrifying. Heathcliff is desperate to get that key to keep her confined, to complete the transaction. And he gives her a shower of terrific slaps to her head.
Violence against an innocent girl, purely to achieve property control. This is the definition of antisocial, calculated malice.
And the psychological torment after the marriage is even darker. He makes sure she feels utterly isolated, telling her he will be all the father you'll have in a few days.
And he sneers that Edgar cursed you, I dare say, for coming into the world. I did, at least. And that her tears will be her chief diversion hereafter.
That's not just cruelty. It is calculated emotional torture designed to break her spirit. He is taking the internal emptiness and humiliation he felt as a child and projecting it onto the innocent heir of his enemy.
Which brings us to the core mechanism driving his adult life, narcissistic supply.
Okay, what is that exactly?
Well, think of narcissistic supply like an emotional battery pack. A person with the pathology needs constant validation, or, failing that, constant proof of their power over others to keep running. And Heathcliff's childhood humiliation left him with this massive, unquenchable deficit.
So by obtaining ownership of both Wuthering Heights and Thrushcross Grange, and having the last remaining members of the Lintons and Earnshaws, Cathy, Linton, and Hareton, under his absolute thumb, he achieves total power.
And that domination provides the ultimate endless supply. It compensates fully for his childhood powerlessness and rejection. He literally owns the world that once scorned him.
And his sadistic pleasure in this is explicitly stated when he's holding young Cathy captive. He declares, "I shall enjoy myself remarkably in thinking your father will be miserable. I shall not sleep for satisfaction."
That statement just removes all ambiguity. This is not the confused rage of a tragic hero. This is a grand, calculated project rooted in the deep-seated, calculated sadism of a malignant personality.
And it's important to note the scope, too. He isn't just seeking vengeance against Hindley. He's seeking vengeance against the entire social order that rejected him.
By reducing Hareton to a boor and enslaving Cathy, he brings the entire noble class down to his level of degradation.
Yet, right at the climax of his triumph, when he has achieved everything he set out to destroy, the whole cycle of revenge, it breaks. And it breaks because of an unintended consequence: the budding relationship between young Cathy and Hareton.
This is where the psychological fixation finally devours the engine of revenge. Hareton, who has been degraded into ignorance, possesses the physical characteristics of Catherine Earnshaw, her eyes, her spirit, her natural warmth, and that becomes a catalyst for Heathcliff's final breakdown.
We see this conflict when young Cathy, the intelligent survivor, begins to civilize Hareton. She teaches him to read, she shows him basic kindness. Nellie catches them together, heads bent over a book. It's a scene of quiet, functional healing.
And Heathcliff witnesses this. When he looks at Hareton, he sees a personification of my youth, but also the ghost of my immortal love. This likeness creates an impossible schism in his mind. The victim of his revenge, Hareton, and the object of his obsession, Catherine, have merged.
He confesses that when he looks for Hareton's father, Hindley, the hated enemy in his face, he finds her every day more. The whole revenge machine just stalls.
He admits he has lost the faculty of enjoying their destruction. He's too idle to destroy for nothing. The victims no longer provide the necessary supply because harming them would be, psychologically, harming Catherine.
The motivation for revenge is eclipsed by his psychological fixation. He even describes his life's destructive work as an absurd termination to my violent exertions.
Right.
So let's talk about that moment of paralysis. Why can't he strike? Is it some residual human feeling, or is it purely the disruption of that narcissistic supply mechanism?
It's the latter. It has to be. If the goal of the narcissist is control and power, and the act of destruction no longer provides a sense of power because the object of destruction now resembled the only thing he ever valued, then the motivation just collapses. The game stops being satisfying.
He's trapped, unable to move forward with the destruction he spent his life cultivating.
Yes. Which leads us naturally to the final stage of the malignant narcissist, the shift from external control to internal chaos, the haunting and the final descent.
What happens when the grand project of revenge and control stops functioning?
The external world fails him, and he turns inward, consumed entirely by Catherine's ghost. His immediate behavior after her burial, in chapter 29, is the first real indication of his shift to mania.
He goes to the churchyard on the night of her burial.
And he begins to delve with all my might, desperately trying to dig up her coffin to hold her physical remains one last time. This is not dignified grief. It's absolute maniacal desperation.
And he only stops digging because he feels Catherine's presence not under the earth, but on the earth. He describes it as an unspeakable consolation.
And this becomes his entire subsequent life. His existence is an effort to find that presence again, to achieve spiritual fusion in the absence of physical reality. He explicitly states in his desperation, the entire world is a dreadful collection of memoranda that she did exist and that I have lost her.
His mind has been completely subsumed by the fixation. It's a perpetual, agonizing reliving of loss. He feels his nerves stretch like catgut under intolerable torture.
And Nellie observes the physical and mental spiral, the restless, anxious expression, the total lack of food and sleep, his growing isolation. He's wasting away, yet experiencing what he perceives as bliss.
In his final days, he confesses, I'm too happy, and yet I'm not happy enough. My soul's bliss kills my body.
That's the peak of delirium. He's achieving union with Catherine, but only in a non-corporeal, deranged, self-created state.
He locks himself away, refusing physical sustenance because he's feeding on this spiritual presence. He mutters detached words, speaking to Catherine as one would speak to a person present, low and earnest and wrung from the depth of his soul.
The malignant narcissist's ultimate triumph is a union with a self-created ghost. It confirms that his internal pathological reality is superior to the flawed external world that rejected him.
And the physical description of his death is horrifyingly vivid and completely devoid of peace.
Nellie enters the room to find him dead, but his look is a frightful, lifelike gaze of exultation with parted lips and sharp white teeth sneered too.
That fixed, sneering expression, it's the final portrait of the persecutor. It's a vindictive triumph against the world. Even Nellie's attempt to close his eyes is mocked. They would not shut. They seem to sneer at my attempts.
His physical remains defy tranquility. They embody the unquiet spirit he was. And this leads us to the ambiguous ending, that blend of reality and folklore. The country folk swear he walks. A little boy sees Heathcliff and a woman yonder, under the nab.
Which confirms the popular romantic narrative of the doomed lovers finally united.
But the narrative closes with Nellie, our grounded, factual voice, offering a powerful counterpoint. She attributes the boy's sightings to him hearing nonsense, and she leaves the final, tranquil image, not of spectral horror, but of the quiet, natural world. Watching the moths and listening to the soft wind over the graves of the three sleepers, Heathcliff, Catherine, and Edgar.
And she wonders, deeply, how anyone could ever imagine unquiet slumbers for the sleepers in that quiet earth.
Her skepticism anchors the entire novel. It suggests the true ghost is psychological, the enduring legacy of rage and guilt.
So what does this deep dive into the text tell us at the end of the day about the malignant narcissist?
I think it validates the psychological reading completely. Heathcliff's journey from abused foundling to grand malignant persecutor shows a person who chose to inflict the pain he was given. His so-called love for Catherine was not based on who she was, but what she represented, a source of unique mirroring and control.
And when that supply was threatened and then eventually lost,
It translated into years of calculated, property-driven revenge designed to inflict his pain on others and achieve total domination over his entire environment.
the true tragedy of Wuthering Heights, then, is not doomed romance, but the failure of empathy. Heathcliff was given a clear choice after his abuse, to heal or to inflict. He chose the latter, trapping himself in a world defined only by his dead obsession.
And that obsession became the only means by which he could justify his existence. And this choice is countered so beautifully by the final image of the second generation, young Cathy and Hareton.
They're learning to read, working together, showing forgiveness and mutual affection.
All the qualities that were surgically removed from Heathcliff's own upbringing.
So, if Heathcliff's ghost is truly just his guilt and madness personified, constantly seeking a union that can never be achieved, does the tranquility of the final scene with Cathy and Hareton together, learning and loving, suggest that the only way to break the narcissistic cycle is not through violence or grand passion, but through basic kindness, patience, and education? That the restoration of social and intellectual dignity is the ultimate antidote to the humiliation that fueled Heathcliff's lifelong quest for destruction? Something for you to ponder the next time you look upon that quiet earth.